Provider-defined functions explained. Terraform fails with an unknown function error when the function name is not registered in the evaluation context. Built-in functions are available from Terraform core, but provider-defined functions are only available when the provider exposes them. The AWS provider does not expose arbitrary helper functions such as partition or DNS suffix lookups. Calling a function that the provider did not register causes Terraform to fail during expression evaluation. This failure happens before resource creation because Terraform must validate and evaluate expressions during planning. Provider-defined functions extend the Terraform language through the provider plugin interface. Terraform requires the provider prefix because function ownership must be explicit. The AWS provider currently exposes a small function surface rather than a general utility library. Terraform resolves ARN parse by handling that call to the AWS provider during expression evaluation. The provider returns a type value that Terraform can use in locals, outputs, or resource arguments. Provider-defined functions run when Terraform evaluates expressions, not when AWS resources are created. Terraform computes the function result early enough to use that value in the plan when the inputs are known. This makes provider-defined functions closer to type parsing and transformation helpers than to resource or data resources. They do not call AWS in the same way a managed resource does. Their result feeds the expression engine, which then feeds arguments into the dependency graph. A provider-defined function does not create an object in Terraform state. Terraform records resources and data instances in state, but not intermediate function calls. The function result only persists if it is stored indirectly through a resource argument or output value. This means provider-defined functions are computation tools, not lifecycle managed objects. They shape values, but they do not own infrastructure. On a submarine, a mislabeled valve lineup card can propagate a wrong assumption through the watch team even when the hardware is functioning correctly. Provider-defined parsing functions carry the same kind of operational risks. If the input string is malformed, but still trusted by the operator, the rest of the configuration inherits that bad structure. The failure is not infrastructure drift first. The failure is bad meaning entering the system at the expression layer. The AWS provider-defined functions are focused on AWS-specific string handling rather than broad environment discovery. ARN parse breaks an ARN into structured parts Terraform can address directly. ARN build constructs an ARN from explicit components instead of manual string concatenation. This reduces brittle string assembly and keeps AWS identity values structurally consistent. The lesson is not that providers add many functions. The lesson is that providers can add narrowly scoped functions where provider-specific structure matters.